Wayfair's Labor Day clearance is on now. Right now at Wayfair, you can get up to 70% off everything home. Shop Wayfair's Labor Day clearance now through September 7th at wayfair.ca.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
30. Montreal, the everyday and the extraordinary. The Elias Macco Show on CJAD 800.
Akil Aline here, filling in for Elias Macos this morning. And right now, how did the U.S. trade deal fail? What exactly happened there? How did it actually play out behind the scenes? Obviously, the relationship between Canada and the U.S. is heading into some pretty rocky terrain right now. The negotiations over trade have collapsed. The Trump administration has imposed new tariffs on billions of dollars worth of Canadian goods. And now Canada is responding with its own retaliatory measures. So Prime Minister Mark Carney argues Canada just could not accept a deal that would have come at the expense of Canada's economic interests and its national sovereignty. So what really happened behind the scenes? The New York Times released a new investigative report trying to figure that one out, and that is why we're now going to hear from our next guest, Matina Stevis-Gridneff, Canada Bureau Chief for the New York Times. Matina, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Hi.
Absolutely. So, in brief, what did happen? And what would you say was the single main catalyst that caused the deal to collapse?
Oh, that's a really hard question because there wasn't one. But I think the most important thing underpinning all of the things that went wrong in the final stretch was a real lack of trust. I know people want to have the one big thing, and if there were to be one, it was that trust became shattered, particularly in the final stretch on Friday before the Prime Minister decided to pull the plug.
And what shattered that trust? What were the main issues that contributed to the breach of that trust?
Yeah, I think that the important elements here were the level of reduction on tariffs on steel and autos, issues around protection of Canadian content online, which the Prime Minister referred to as French language-related issues, as well as a number of other factors, like we reported exclusively that the U.S. side wanted the Buy Canadian government program, which asks government entities to favor Canadian products such as steel, and asked from the U.S. side to conclude that earlier than planned. And I think fundamentally a feeling on the Canadian side that the goalposts were moving on Friday toward the end of the conversations. Like a lot of things had been discussed verbally, and just in the final hours, instead of one by one those issues being settled, they were instead being thrown open again. And that sort of undermined the trust that the U.S. was kind of serious about getting this deal or serious about addressing Canada's concerns. And I would also add a real concern about asks from the U.S. side that were resurfaced toward the end for the U.S. to have a real role in Canada's tariff regime of other countries, in particular when it came to steel.
Interesting. So what was the role of provincial governments in this? Because I've seen reports that certain provinces are going to be especially hard hit by the U.S. tariffs, places like Ontario, British Columbia, Quebec, of course. What about what role did the provincial premiers play in this?
Yeah, well, as you probably remember from last week, the Prime Minister and mostly Dominique LeBlanc and other senior government officials briefed premiers. And there was a sort of, I think Wab Kineau kind of put it best. It was kind of like a reluctant support. Like, we're going to do what the Prime Minister wants to get this over the line if he thinks that's the best thing to do, but we're not going to be happy about it, right? And that was what emerged on Wednesday, Thursday. My reporting shows that the Prime Minister did speak with Premier Ford of Ontario at around 10 p.m. on Friday as he was coming close to deciding that this wasn't worth it. Not to suggest that Mark Carney made this decision because of Doug Ford, but I do think it weighed because Doug Ford and Ontario have the most to lose, really, there in terms of steel and autos, two major Ontario industries. And I think that the decision by the Premier, as we are reporting, not to comply with the demand to restore the sale of U.S. alcohol products on Friday, which was conveyed to the Prime Minister by Mr. Ford on that Friday evening phone call, I think that is significant.
This is Akil Aline, filling in for Elias Makos this morning. I'm chatting with Matina Stevis-Gridneff, Canada Bureau Chief for the New York Times, and she's giving us a behind-the-scenes look at exactly how the trade negotiations between the U.S. and Canada broke down and collapsed over last weekend. We'd love to hear from you on this subject. I really want to hear your thoughts and feelings on the collapse of the trade deal and everything that's happened since then. So please feel free to text into our line at 514-790-0800. So, Matina, I'm curious as to what kind of noises are coming from the U.S. side, both within the Trump administration, their officials. We all know that Trump can be very unpredictable and, he'll threaten tariffs, pull them back, that sort of thing. We don't necessarily know what he's going to do from day to day. Is there any information out there about how his administration officials actually feel about these things? Are they sincerely following him because they buy into his whole approach, or are they just taking orders like loyal soldiers and repeating his narratives because that's their job?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really big question, and I'm not qualified to answer it. But what I can tell you with regards to the Canada relationship, particularly and specifically, is I think that there was a lot of willingness in the administration to make an agreement with Canada. And I actually think Canada wanted a deal too. So I think we should start with that. President Trump did instruct his negotiators to get a deal. I think fundamentally what is a deal in President Trump's mind and what is a deal in Canada's mind, and frankly the mind of any sovereign nation, may be a bit apart, right? So the U.S. side insists, we offered Canada the best deal of any country. And I think objectively that's true. But the Canadian side determined, for the reasons we've been discussing, that even that just simply was not good enough. And so, for sure, I think there are elements in the administration of people who think that this is not the right battle to pick. He's got so many problems in his hands with Iran, with just, the economy in the U.S. So I think a lot of people are a bit mystified that he's picking this fight with Canada. Polling also shows that supporters and generally Americans just don't get it, and it's only really the hardcore MAGA supporters who would do whatever Trump wants that are like, yeah, Canada, boo. I don't think this is a generalized emotion either inside the administration nor out on the street, right? But it doesn't matter. The way that the administration is being run right now is so executive. Power has been taken to such an extent away from Congress until the midterms at least that, he calls the shots. And we've seen how he's been reacting this week. In terms of new tariffs being threatened for January and just a war of words for whatever it means, right? It's very detrimental to the atmosphere, even if kind of getting into a verbal fight with Doug Ford doesn't make policy.
Right. Well, Matina, you just took the words right out of my mouth, because you just already addressed what was going to be my next question, which is, how are Americans reacting to this on that side of the border? But one thing that I am curious about very briefly before we break is, just where do we go from here? What are you hearing on that side of the border, especially in response to the retaliatory countermeasures that Mark Carney's government has announced? Are you getting any reactions other than Trump himself, of course, and his top administration officials, but whether at the grassroots level or just in other areas of American society, what's the reaction to Canada's reaction to Trump's trade threats?
Well, I think certainly, these are going to need some time to play out. The counter tariffs are coming in on September 8th. I don't think that's an accident. I think the Prime Minister wants to give it a little time for all of this information to be ingested and digested and make its way through the system. I think the Prime Minister's bet is that it will it will lead industries and local leaders to the White House asking the Trump administration to re-engage in negotiations and make this go away. Will that be the case? I'm not so sure. Even if it is, I don't think that Trump cares so much. One thing we have seen is that he's been pretty resistant to grassroots calls to improve things or change policies. So I don't know that the kind of transmission mechanisms of pressure are working on the U.S. side. We'll see. But what we are hearing, both from industry and governors in particular, is that many of these measures will hurt in a local way. And these are the voices that are most strongly calling for restraint and climbing down from this crisis and finding a way back to the negotiating table. I don't think we're going to see that yet.
Matina Stevis-Gridneff, Canada Bureau Chief for the New York Times. Thanks so much for shedding more light on this issue for us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, let's check your traffic.
Wayfair's Labor Day clearance is on now. Right now at Wayfair, you can get up to 70% off everything home. Shop Wayfair's Labor Day clearance now through September 7th at wayfair.ca.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
This Labor Day weekend, experience Taste of Manitoba presented by Manitoba Liquor Mart. September 3rd through 7th at Fort Gibraltar. Savor incredible dishes from 20 of Manitoba's favorite local restaurants. Enjoy local beverages, live entertainment, and daily themed days. Plus, explore the Travel Manitoba Vendor Village. If you can't make it, you can skip Taste of Manitoba right to your door.
Entrance is free, so join us for Taste of Manitoba September 3rd to 7th at Fort Gibraltar. Get tickets at tasteofmb.com. Please drink responsibly.
Breaking news. Considered. The Elias Macko Show. News Talk Radio. CJAD 800.
Akil Aline here, filling in for Elias Mackos. Right now, the U.S. trying to get the rest of the world, it seems, to cut ties with Tehran along with the U.S. itself. The war in Iran has been going on for months now, and now the Trump administration is changing strategy. The U.S. is shifting from military pressure to what it's calling an economic D-Day, with new sanctions designed to isolate Iran financially and target countries and companies that continue doing business with Iran. Meanwhile, Tehran is warning that any country that joins this American economic campaign could face consequences. So, obviously, a major issue in this is the Strait of Hormuz. It's a vital energy route in the global economy. A whole lot of commerce, especially in the oil sector, passes through that strait. Iran is threatening to punish or seize ships that violate the rules that it imposes on transit through the strait. On the other hand, the United States is trying to pressure Tehran into reopening the strait and returning to negotiations. So to shed some light on this and show us what's going on, Kyle Matthews, co-founder and executive director of the Montreal Institute for Global Security, joins me on the line now. Kyle, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So, obviously this U.S. war on Tehran has been going on, wearing on since last winter. And now it looks like Trump is trying to use economic pressure. Is that going to replace military pressure at all? Or can we expect Trump to keep up the military pressure along with this economic campaign?
So in the ideal world, it would have started with diplomacy, followed by economic pressure, then military force if needed. But we seem to have taken the other approach, military force first, then diplomacy, and now this. So, listen, I think the Iranian regime, it's not a normal regime. They're a religious theocracy. They are willing to make sacrifices for their long-term political goals. And I think there's been a miscalculation. I don't know if we're going to see more military action taken against Iran, because the simple fact is it's reported across multiple channels that the U.S. has used a lot of their munitions, particularly missiles and stuff, and they now have a critical shortage, which means that they can't respond to another part of the world, either a conflict in Taiwan or around Japan. So yeah, they're using the economic toolbox, but we're going to see whether other countries listen to the U.S. This time or not.
And what are some of the measures that the U.S. is using to try to arm twist other countries into joining its economic isolation of Iran? I mean, we have some experience with that here in Canada because that's one of the reasons it seems, generally speaking, that the Trump administration was basically pressuring the Carney government to agree to let the U.S. influence Canada's trade policies with other nations in general. But what are some of the measures that the Trump administration is taking to try to get other countries to join its boycott of Iran?
So the U.S. yesterday announced this D-Day economic sanctions targeting over 60 organizations and individuals in Iran. It's threatened, and this is where it gets interesting. It's asking for its allies, who are now, of course, have a weakened relationship with the U.S. under President Trump, but it's asking its allies to comply, but it's also threatening other countries that trade with Iran. So China has come up and said, how dare you threaten us, and we'll wait and see. Is the U.S. going to sanction Chinese banks? And then this becomes a flashpoint between not just the U.S. and Iran, but between the two strongest economic military countries on the planet, the U.S. and China. And so that's where this could go. But we don't know. But the truth is that the U.S. has, the whole financial system works on the U.S. dollar. So the U.S. has a lot of tools it can use to weaken Iran. But if they survive the military component, I'm not sure if this will do it, but they think that this is probably the best strategy to do at the moment.
Akil Aline here, filling in for Elias Makos this morning. Here on the Elias Makos Show, we're chatting with Kyle Matthews, co-founder and executive director of the Montreal Institute for Global Security, about the U.S. campaign to try to get the rest of the world to isolate Tehran, to isolate Iran economically along with the United States. And I'd love to hear from you, the listener, on this subject. If you have any thoughts of your own, please feel free to text into our line at 514-790-0800. So, Kyle, one thing I've heard in the past when it comes to economic sanctions in general is that their effectiveness depends heavily on what type of sanctions they are. So, for example, I've heard that trade sanctions, sanctions on imports and things like that, can be circumvented. There are ways around them without too much difficulty. But financial sanctions, sanctions on banking, on lending between governments and things like that, or freezing of assets, those kinds of financial sanctions are harder to evade and can be more economically damaging to the target country. Has that been your experience, and is the Trump administration taking that into account here? Are they focusing on specifically financial sanctions against Iran?
So yeah. I mean, the issue of sanctions have been used in many cases in the past. We've got Magnitsky sanctions that have been used recently against individuals in government responsible for human rights abuses. Then you have these wider economic sanctions cutting countries off from U.S. banking and international banking. So that can have a massive economic impact. However, if you look globally at the use of sanctions, have sanctions alone stop the behavior of a state? And I think the record there is a little more mixed. You know, we have a lot of sanctions against Russia for its invasion of Ukraine, but they're still able to navigate and get technology and ship it through other people or through fake groups. So right. It's a massive undertaking to take. And the thing for Iran, it's backed by Russia and particularly China, and China has enormous financial resources. So I don't think it will be as easy as one would expect. But and then there's the other blowback, is what will Iran do in response to this? Iran has used proxy groups around the world to attack. We've seen attacks being carried out in Europe by criminal groups that are funded by Iran. We know that the U.S. consulate that was shot twice in Toronto was backed by Iran, using criminal actors to target it. So Iran also has another way to wage warfare that could have a negative impact on U.S. interest.
So ultimately, you know, the U.S. is trying to get the rest of the world to join its boycott of Iran, so to speak. Is there any success? Have any countries given any indication that they're willing to sort of cave in and knuckle under and do what Trump is demanding of them?
Well, I think some countries will just work with the American government, not the Trump administration, but the government, to do some of these things through their sanction regimes. The big question is really is about China and Russia, and how much leverage does China have to support Iran. But listen, this is the case. This is a war that we were told was going to take three days or 2 weeks, a very short period. We're now 6 months into it. The Straits of Hormuz are effectively still closed. Other countries in the region can't ship out their energy. It's having a massive impact on economic security and global trade. So it's kind of like in a quagmire. I don't see this being fixed in any short-term manner. I see it as a much longer-term issue in which Iran has a few other cards to play that perhaps were not taken seriously when the decision was made to conduct a military operation against the country.
Kyle Matthews of the Montreal Institute for Global Security, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. Now, coming up on the Elias Mako show, airlines trying to improve their economy class. Is it actually for you? Will it actually benefit the average passenger out there? Also, are Canada's retaliatory tariffs against the Straits of the United States the right approach? Is this the right way to stand up to the Donald Trump administration? More on that to come after the news.
Wayfair's Labor Day clearance is on now. Right now at Wayfair, you can get up to 70% off everything home. Shop Wayfair's Labor Day clearance now through September 7th at wayfair.ca.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
This Labor Day weekend, experience Taste of Manitoba presented by Manitoba Liquor Mart. September 3rd through 7th at Fort Gibraltar. Savor incredible dishes from 20 of Manitoba's favorite local restaurants. Enjoy local beverages, live entertainment, and daily themed days. Plus, explore the Travel Manitoba Vendor Village. If you can't make it, you can skip Taste of Manitoba right to your door.
Entrance is free, so join us for Taste of Manitoba September 3rd to 7th at Fort Gibraltar. Get tickets at tasteofmb.com. Please drink responsibly.
La STN vous souhaite la bienvenue à bord.
Doing his best to get you there on time. This is In Transit on the Elias Mako Show, CJAD 800.
Akil Aline here, sitting in for Elias Makos. Now on In Transit, airlines are trying to improve their economy class offerings, but is it actually going to make things any better for you and me? For most people, economy class is basically a reality of flying. You get the cheapest seat you can find, you squeeze yourself in, and you hope and pray that the person sitting right in front of you doesn't recline. But Canadian Airlines, it seems they're now trying to make that experience less painful. They're bringing in new technology. They're upgrading entertainment. They're making other changes that are meant to make the economy class experience more bearable, maybe even enjoyable. But are these changes actually going to make flying better for passengers, or are these airlines really just premiumizing economy class? So John Gradek is going to join us. He is a faculty lecturer of operations and integrated aviation management at McGill. He joins us on the line now to help us figure this out. John, thanks so much for coming in.
My pleasure, Akil, to be with you.
Absolutely. So what are some of these changes that these airlines are trying to make now to make things better?
Oh, they're doing things like putting bigger screens on board airplanes. They're trying to improve the audio on the headsets. They're looking at putting wings on the back seat, on the headrests of your seats.
Wings on the headrests? Really?
Wings on the headrest of your seats.
You mean like the tail fins they had on those cars back in the 50s?
Pretty close, but the little things, the little winglets, I call them winglets in the back of your seat. So the headrest basically has, a couple of inches of wings at the end, either end of it, so that when you lie down or you sit down, you can roll your head and you won't fall on the shoulder of your seatmate. So they basically are there to protect your head from moving around on the seat.
Oh.
So it's an interesting little gadget. But these are all little trinkets and all little things that the airlines are doing to kind of, differentiate themselves from what they had before. But they're bringing in thinner seats that give you the impression that you've got more legroom, but there's thinner seats and there's less padding. The cushioning is different. So they're doing things in economy class to kind of dense up the airplane to be able to put more seats in economy. But on the flip side, they really are creating a new premium class, a new business class with different types of seats, wider seats. But guess what? That you're not paying economy class tickets for those seats. You're paying significantly higher fares for those seats.
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, in order to try to make more money, airlines, because of just the structure of an airplane or maybe any vehicle for that matter, one of the things they kind of have to try to do is find ways to squeeze more passengers onto a single plane without completely alienating and antagonizing all of their customers, right? But that's tricky to do when it's an airplane. Are there ways that they could actually do that? I mean, I think of examples from other parts of transportation, areas of the transportation industry, like say Megabus, and how they resorted to double-decker buses to be able to squeeze more passengers onto a single bus. Could anything like that work with airlines?
No, it already has. I think that you're looking. One of my favorite airplanes is the A380 from Airbus, a double-decker airplane. And, you basically have, that airplane in a single deck mode would carry 400 passengers. In a double deck mode, it carry up to 600 passengers. So for every plane that departs, you're able to carry 200 passengers additionally. Doesn't cost too much more to fly the airplane single deck versus double deck. Fuel probably. But, you're making, 50% more money if the airplane's full. So they are basically stacking up the airplane. They're densing up the airplane. But the big deal these days is what I call premiumization, where they take premium class seats and they're increasing the number of seats in premium class. They're differentiating different types of premium class. You have basic premium, you have intermediate premium, and you have full premium. And they give you real estate that's really reflecting of that differentiation, and they also differentiate service. In basic premium, you just get a cold meal. In intermediate premium, you get a free drink, and in full premium, you get a hot meal and a free drink, and maybe a smile. But that's and people are buying it. People are, in fact, the biggest category of seats being sold in North American Airlines today are the premium seats. So the airlines are premiumization is what I call it. The way in which they in fact are exercising additional revenues by differentiating the seats and the service.
Akil Aline here, filling in for Elias Makos on the Elias Makos Show. Right now, I'm joined by John Gradek, who is a faculty lecturer of operations and integrated aviation management at McGill, and he's chatting about airlines, particularly here in Canada, trying to improve the economy class experience by giving it more premium type perks. So we're going to find out, or we're finding out, whether that's actually going to benefit the average passenger. I'd love to hear from you as well on that subject, so feel free to text into our line 514-790-0800. So, John, it sounds like you were just saying that it's actually working. Are actual ordinary customers really buying into this and buying tickets at higher rates because of it?
Yeah, people are tired of the cattle class. They're tired of being squeezed in by less leg room and more people sitting across from each other. The back of the aircraft is getting more dense in terms of passenger counts. The service level, the screens are narrower. The sound is not as great. So they've invested money into the front of the airplane. So people are in fact seeing that front of the airplane and saying, "Hey, wait a second. I'm going on a trip, a leisure trip, whether it's to Europe or the Caribbean or to Canada, and I'm saying I'll pay the extra bucks to sit in a non-cattle class seat." And that's the biggest category it's sold these days. So yeah, people are still buying based on price, and you have those seats in the back of the airplane, but people are upgrading, and people are buying those premium seats and those premium features. So is it a strategy that will work in the long term? Probably not. And the reason why is because the competition is far outpacing the service levels and the cabin environment that they're creating on the new airplanes that they're bringing in. So Air Canada is just tweaking the 30 or 35-year-old airplanes that they have to put what I call a bit of lipstick on that airplane, whereas the new carriers are coming in with new airplanes that are significantly different seating characteristics and very different level of service.
So wait then, let me make sure I'm understanding you correctly. Because I know you mentioned earlier that some seats are being narrowed, if I heard you correctly. But people obviously are sick and tired of cattle class. So in what areas are narrower seats being sold, and how is that actually appealing to people if people are tired of cattle class? Because wouldn't that mean that people are being squeezed in more?
But people still buy based on price. You know, you go and you say, well, you want to fly from Montreal to Vancouver, and you've got 3 different types of classes on the airplane. For cattle class is $250 one way. Premium, basic premium is $400 one way, and full premium is $600 one way. So some people are saying, I've tried the $250 ticket, I don't like it. 6 hours on an airplane in cattle class is not my idea of a good time. I'll pay the extra $350 and sit in a more comfortable seat for 6 hours. So, people are making decisions now to basically buy up into the different cabins on the airplane. But there's the seats that they're giving up in economy are being sold, and they're being filled by people who are there just for price.
Yes, so it's all about the bucks at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Imagine that. Yeah, so, that's really interesting. So ultimately, compared to airlines from other countries, do you think that this is going to make much of a... I know you mentioned that you don't think it's going to make a huge difference in the long run, right? But is that specifically just, Canadian Airlines or in the industry across the world?
Well, I think the Canadian airlines are trying to catch up to the world's premium airlines in terms of services on board the airplane. You fly on Emirates, you fly on Qatar, you fly on United Airlines, you fly on Air France, you fly on Lufthansa. Even the economy experience is very different that you would normally fly on an Air Canada similar route. So the other carriers have invested billions of dollars in the whole cabin, in the whole of the aircraft. Air Canada is being picky and choosy in terms of where it invests and what part of the cabin it's going to invest in. And Air Canada and WestJet have decided that they're going to invest in the premium cabins, and improve, and they're going to leave the economy cabins alone for now. And that to me is a very short-term strategy. That's not going to survive. Hopefully Air Canada will be getting some new airplanes. They've kind of made some announcements. We're not sure when they're going to get delivered. That could be a different story. But hopefully with the next generation of airplanes that Air Canada is thinking of buying, they'll finally catch up. But that'll take years to happen. So in the meantime. Suffer in economy class and enjoy premium class.
John Gradek from the Faculty of Operations and Integrated Aviation Management at McGill. Thanks so much for joining us and clearing that up for us.
Akil, have a great day. Take care.
Likewise. Akil Aline here, filling in for Elias Makos.
Wayfair's Labor Day clearance is on now. Right now at Wayfair, you can get up to 70% off everything home. Shop Wayfair's Labor Day clearance now through September 7th at wayfair.ca.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
This Labor Day weekend, experience Taste of Manitoba presented by Manitoba Liquor Mart. September 3rd through 7th at Fort Gibraltar. Savor incredible dishes from 20 of Manitoba's favorite local restaurants. Enjoy local beverages, live entertainment, and daily themed days. Plus, explore the Travel Manitoba Vendor Village. If you can't make it, you can skip Taste of Manitoba right to your door.
Entrance is free, so join us for Taste of Manitoba September 3rd to 7th at Fort Gibraltar. Get tickets at tasteofmb.com. Please drink responsibly.
Stories impacting Montrealers. News impacting Montreal. The Elias Macko Show. News Talk Radio. CJAD 800.
Akil Aline here, filling in for Elias Makos. Right now, we're going to be chatting with the mayor, that is, of the city of Laval, because Mayor Stéphane Boyer is sounding the alarm over what he says is a chronic shortage of hospital beds in his city. And he's actually drawing a comparison between that situation in Laval and the situations in certain countries overseas. And it's a pretty striking comparison indeed, but I won't spoil the surprise. Let's get it straight from the source himself. Joining me on the line right now is Laval Mayor Stéphane Boyer. Mayor Boyer, thank you for coming online with us.
Good morning. It's my pleasure.
Absolutely. So, can you just sum up for us what the situation is, and to which other parts of the world you think Laval is similar in this area?
Yes, absolutely. So, in Laval, we are the third largest city in Quebec, but we have only one hospital that was built for 270 residents. We are now 460,000 residents. And there was no other investment for decades. So now what we are living through is that we have a shortage of bed in the emergency room, but also for anybody that have, let's say, a surgery or that needs to spend a few days at the hospital, which makes Laval the region with the lowest number of beds per resident that could be compared with Iraq or Burma or other African countries. We have only like half of the average number of beds per residents that the other regions of Quebec have. So it's a real problem right now.
And what is the reason for this? Why hasn't more been done before now to try to expand the hospital bed capacity in Laval?
Laval has always lived through a lack of investment in general. I think one of the reasons is that we live in the shadow of Montreal. When our elected officials at the National Assembly take decisions, there's always a lot of consideration for Quebec City, the capital, for Montreal, the metropolis. But cities around those cities often fall short in between two chairs. So we don't benefit programs for regions. We don't benefit the programs for the capital or the metropolis. And sometimes we are, under the right radar. And what we see is that in the last decade, Laval has been almost every year the region with the less investment in everything: health, education, transport. So there's a chronicle underinvestment. And today, and this is why I did the comparison that is striking with Iraq, just to, put the lights on a problem. Right now, in rooms where we used to have 2 beds that are made for 2 beds, two patients, they are in general 5 person, and we even have to put some person in the corridor. So let's say you have a surgery to your heart. If you go at the Cité-de-la-Santé Laval, you have very good personnel and doctors to operate you, but you might spend, the next 3 nights in the corridor, sleeping under the lights, and with the speakers blasting calls every 5 minutes. So this is not something that we can accept. Okay. And there is a project to expand the actual hospital, but it has been waiting since 2018 to get finances. And so get the funding for it.
Right. And so is there a particular reason why you're speaking out on this issue right now? Does it have anything to do with the upcoming provincial election, for example?
Yes, absolutely. That is why we are talking about it right now. There is a provincial election that might start tomorrow, and we want to make sure that anybody that wants to get elected in the next election is aware of what's going on in Laval, and that it will be on the radar of every political parties. So what we are asking for is commitments from the different parties to, if they are elected, to invest in the expansion of the actual hospital. So we are not asking to have more than any other city or region in the province. We are just asking to be treated as any other, as equal. We're doing the same ask for the CJAD Montmorency, which is full. It's overflowing. They're refusing over 1,000 students every year. They're renting out spaces in an old shopping mall. They've built temporary classroom in their parking lots last summer. So we feel like Laval deserves to have investments to the level of its population, which is the population of the third biggest city in the province.
This is Akil Aline filling in for Elias Makos on the Elias Makos show this morning. Right now, we're chatting with Mayor Stéphane Boyer of the city of Laval over the shortage of hospital beds in Laval and what will hopefully be done about it. If you have any thoughts to share on this subject, maybe if you're from Laval or have lived in Laval and have experienced the consequences of this shortage of hospital beds, please feel free to text into our line at 514-790-0800. So, Mayor Boyer, have you gotten any kind of response from the major political parties or maybe any of their individual candidates so far?
Well, I went on the ground with each of them. So each of the candidates to be prime minister came to Laval in the last few days or weeks, and I visited with them the hospital. They were able to actually walk in the hospital, meet people living in the corridor. So I think now everybody is aware. Of course, the different political parties have not made their list of commitments public yet. So we are still waiting to see in the upcoming days what their engagements will be. But I think now, every leader is now very aware of what's going on, and hopefully it will be able to, make the things shift and go forward with the expansion of the hospital. This is, to me, it's a very basic need. We're not asking for, something of luxury or anything that is unnecessary. We're asking just for basic health access. So hopefully it will be met with commitments in the upcoming days.
Now, that's a very good thing to hope for, certainly. I suppose what I'm wondering is, it reminds me of so many other issues that we've heard of, whether it's the condition of Montreal's roads, Quebec's roads in general, just problems that have existed for decades, like you mentioned, and that really should have been, if not solved, then at least addressed long ago. And I would imagine this probably isn't the first time that you or others, maybe your predecessors, have raised this issue at election time or right before election time, provincially and otherwise. Is there anything that makes you confident that the issue will be meaningfully addressed by the provincial government this time? Yeah,
good questions. And I think, what upsets me is that often decisions are not made based on real needs, but they are based on the hope to win 2 or 3 ridings. And to me, what makes me confident that we might get heard this time is that the facts are there and they are strong. We have, the highest occupancy rate of all hospitals in Quebec. We have the lowest rate of beds in the whole of province, and many candidates were not aware of that. So I think it's they cannot push aside from the back of their hands those facts. So hopefully science will make those candidates reflect on what is the good thing to do.
Laval Mayor Stéphane Boyer, thank you so much for joining me to discuss the shortage of hospital beds in Laval and what can be done about it. Much appreciated.
Thanks a lot. Have a nice day.
Likewise. Akil Aline here, filling in for Elias Makos. You just heard us discuss that issue with Mayor Boyer of Laval. Coming up, we're going to be talking to people like economist Vincent Geloso about whether Mark Carney's retaliatory counter tariffs are the right way to respond to Donald Trump's trade war on Canada. We're also going to be checking in with Akila Newton of Overture with the Arts about what to expect from this year's Island Fête Caribbean Festival in the West Island. That and so much more in the rest of the Elias Makos show today. But for now, let's go to the news.
Wayfair's Labor Day clearance is on now. Right now at Wayfair, you can get up to 70% off everything home. Shop Wayfair's Labor Day clearance now through September 7th at wayfair.ca.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
This Labor Day weekend, experience Taste of Manitoba presented by Manitoba Liquor Mart. September 3rd through 7th at Fort Gibraltar. Savor incredible dishes from 20 of Manitoba's favorite local restaurants. Enjoy local beverages, live entertainment, and daily themed days. Plus, explore the Travel Manitoba Vendor Village. If you can't make it, you can skip Taste of Manitoba right to your door.
Entrance is free, so join us for Taste of Manitoba September 3rd to 7th at Fort Gibraltar. Get tickets at tasteofmb.com. Please drink responsibly.
You're listening to the Voice of Montreal.
News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
An iHeartRadio station.
This newscast is brought to you by Renovco. Renovco does it all, including plumbing. From renovations to plumbing, trust one team. Call Renovco today or visit renovcoplumbing.com.
Hey, I'm Ruby Carr, the host of the podcast Encore. Check out our brand new episodes featuring music from the show that everyone is reheating as we speak, Heated Rivalry. Join me as I go behind the songs that brought Shane and Elia together. I'll tell you the stories of Feist, My Moon, My Man, Wolf Parade's I'll Believe in Anything, and Tattoo's All the Things She Said, and how they all became a part of this global phenomenon. Stream Encore on iHeartRadio, Crave, or wherever you get your podcasts.